Knowing your audience is the single most important thing about embarking on a film project. Knowing your audience is like having a North Star. It's your backbone. When you know your audience, you're better able to dictate every creative decision down the line, from development to production to distribution. There's a reason that Alex gets into it so early in his book, Rise of the Filmtrepreneur. It's absolutely essential. When it comes to independent film, there's an audience for everything. Your job as a storyteller is to figure out who that audience is and get your film in front of them. And if you can't find an audience, create one. One of the earliest challenges that I set out for myself when I finished the script to The Veil was figuring out who the audience for this film was. So if you've already got a couple projects under your belts in any given medium, whether that's film or TV or comics, books, anything, ask yourself if there's already a built-in audience that you've cultivated from that you can tap into. So for me, my audience was the Director's Series. It took me the better part of a decade to build that audience up. It's grown very slowly and it requires constant cultivation. But at the end of the day, there's something that I can count on as an audience. The next important thing about your audience is to know your existing audience demographics. Take a look at your platform of choice. Most platforms, whether it's YouTube or Vimeo or WordPress, they have these really detailed analytic sections. You can really analyze the breakdown of your audience by every available demographic. And from there, you can start to build a profile of your audience, almost kind of like a character. Marketing gurus and tech bros will call it a lookalike audience, which alludes to the fact that it's essentially a clone of yourself in the digital realm made entirely out of data about your consumption habits. And that's kind of a dehumanizing way to go about it, don't you think? I find it helps to think about it like as if they were a character, and your job is to sell your film to this character. So where having a script first really comes in handy is you have a really great sense of what is in that script. You know the genre, you know the setting, key plot points, key themes that the story explores. It's all information that you can use. Now, very important, two things that you should not do. Do not say that your film has 4-quadrant mass appeal, or that is for everybody. If your film is truly for everybody, then it's for nobody. The second thing is to say that your film is for people like yourself. That's not to be confused with saying that you're making the kind of films that you want to see in the world, because that is a good thing. Building an audience is about making a connection, not looking into the mirror. Chapter 6 of Alex's book, Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, really gets into this, and it's called niching down. Look at whatever niche you have. Is there a sub-niche within that niche? Is there a sub-niche within that sub-niche? You're probably asking yourself, how can you identify the size of your niche? And thankfully, Alex also lays out a few really great tools that will help you do that. So first of all, social media, Facebook groups, associated hashtags. All that lets you see how many people are talking about your subject matter at a given moment in time. Reddit is also a great place to look for your niche. There's a subreddit for just about anything you can imagine. And by going to the subreddit that corresponds with your niche, you can immediately see how many people belong to that subreddit. How active is it? When was the last time somebody posts? That's all really crucial information. If you go somewhere and there's only maybe a couple hundred people that belong to the subreddit and the last post was a year ago, then that tells you right there that this niche probably is too small to justify the expense of making a film, and then you have to niche back up. Another useful tool that I find is imagine that your project is already a finished film that's out there in the marketplace. Let's just say it's using the transactional video on demand model where you rent the thing for $3 to $5. Ask yourself, will you be able to break even with that audience? Even if you can only convert 1 to 10% of that size into active sales. Another important consideration is how people within this niche consume their media. You need to make it available wherever they already are. I find it helps to break down your audience into primary, secondary, and even tertiary demographics. In order to find that, I like to start with other films or TV that can serve as reference points. You want to start looking for recurring points of interest between these various projects. For instance, for The Veil, I identified the following touchstones: Primer, Fast of Night, First Reformed, Silent Light, The Village, The Witch, and then a book, called House of Leaves. So I could then group these films together in various pairings based off common attributes, almost like a double feature or a goofy algorithm-induced subgenre produced by Netflix. So first you have micro-budget cinema. Films in this category include Primer, Vast of Night. Then you have twisty homegrown sci-fi, which also includes the same films. Then there's religious anxiety, First Reformed, The Witch, Silent Light, and then contained art house horror, The Witch, The Village, and the book House of Leaves. You want to try to identify the respective audiences within those groupings. Your expectations and your assumptions about your audience are going to grow and evolve as the project does. So you're just trying to kind of create a baseline that will help guide direction for you personally. So let's go back to our groupings. Number one, micro budget cinema. I have a lot of experience in this milieu, so I'm coming from a place of pretty confident assumptions. This group is predominantly male, probably early 20s to late 20s. You know, they're just kind of starting out on their love affair with cinema. They look to success stories in the micro budget realm as kind of these as inspiration stories. They read blogs like Indie Film Hustle and No Film School and Film School Rejects. Given their age, they are avid digital consumers, but they probably also are not above seeking out physical media if they're hardcore enough about what they're trying to see. The second pairing, twisty, homegrown sci-fi. This is also comprised of a lot of indie enthusiasts, probably in their late 30s, early 40s. They came of age during the indie sci-fi boom of the early 2000s, and they probably skew more male. Examples from this milieu are, District 9, Upstream Color. This audience, as far as their consumption habits is concerned, they're probably more legacy media oriented, but they are streaming literate and they subscribe to the big platforms as well as niche ones. Third container, religious anxiety. Here you probably start to see a better balance of the male-female demographics and maybe more of a slight edge towards the female. They're in their late 20s through their 40s. They're probably more coastal too in location. Examples in this realm, Saint Maud, The Exorcist. And then there's contained art house horror. This has, again, a good male-female balance with probably a slight edge towards the female. This audience is coastal, early 20s to late 30s. I find it helps to think of this audience as the same audience that's responsible for the success of studios like A24 and Neon. Studios that also have grown to become lifestyle brands. They're arbiters of cool. They allow you to wield your taste as a badge of honor. This audience really likes mood and atmosphere, more so than plot. They just really like strong vibes. And there's a high value placed on well-realized female protagonists. They consume primarily digitally, but physical is an important element if there's some sort of kind of swag element attached to it, like a limited run DVD or merchandise. And then, this audience is also active in theater going, and probably your best bet as far as generating any sort of revenue from a digital TVOD model. Knowing all that, you want to step back and you want to look for areas of overlap and imagine each one of them as, circles in a Venn diagram. You're trying to define where they overlap because that's the audience that you're going for. So for instance, with The Veil, after I synthesize all of this, I have a hypothetical character build and a niche to pursue. So what would I say The Veil's primary niche is? Art house science fiction with a secondary niche of contained horror. The Pennsylvania setting of the story suggests I should maybe focus on the Northeast as a demographic, as well as coastal cities and other cities and states with strong familiarity with Amish populations like Ohio and Indiana. As far as a tertiary audience is concerned, I'm focusing on the Northwest because that's where I'm from. I know that area of the country very, very well. The Northern Lights are a phenomenon that a lot of Northwesterners are familiar with, more so, in Alaska, obviously, but it's something that is a small part of our collective experience up there. Now you have all this information and you can lay it out into a single sentence that defines your audience and implies a strategy. And I have it written down here in my outline. The primary audience of The Veil, as it currently stands right now, is males in their 30s to 40s in northeastern cities and suburbs, as well as small towns with vibrant arts communities. My secondary audience is women in their mid-20s to mid-30s in coastal cities. So already you can get a sense of how this might manifest as a character. And now comes the really fun part, making the film that you think that this character would want to see.